Thank you for the lovely introduction, Maggie, and welcome everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about relationships. It's a subject that's near and dear to my heart. My most recent book, From the Bar to the Boardroom, Choreographing Authentic Relationships, Business Success Through Authentic Relationships, is how I have lived my whole life, this success I've seen in my business. And I'm going to share a little bit more about that and give you the tips, advice, and strategies so you can be doing this as well. We're going to be talking about top strategies to leverage relationships resulting in business success. So why am I really passionate about this? Why do I believe relationships are the end-all, be-all in life, truly? Because life we look at and business is not separate from life. Life is the big encompassing thing. And then we have business, and then we have all the other things, our personal lives, our hobbies, our families, our friendships. And all of that comes down to the value of great relationships. Back in the day, when I got into the printing industry, which was in the late 80s, I had come out of working for a corporate event catering companies. And it was owned by two sisters. I started in printing, and I had to learn the trade. I had to learn what I was selling. About a month in, I said, I'm ready. I'm commissioned. I'm ready. I'm ready to hit this, get started here. Where do I start? And I was told, well, there's the yellow pages or the pavement. Pick one and go. This was way before we had security in New York City buildings, and you could literally ride the elevators, hence the good old-fashioned elevator pitch. Be that as it may, I said, well, that doesn't really sound like me. I don't like talking to strangers. So I called my old boss, and I said, just want to give you a heads up. I'm going to reach out to you because I ran all the account management and sales for the company as well. So I'm going to reach out for all the connections that I met through your company, and I'm going to ask them who they know who would be in printing, who might be buying printing or do anything in marketing or advertising or anything like that. And I just wanted to give you a heads up. I didn't want you to think I was going into competition by any means. And she said to me over the phone, Ivy, what did you think you were going to do? Walk New York City with a sandwich sign and find people? Of course that's what you're going to do. It's the smartest and only solution. From those relationships, I closed my first account. From those relationships, I continued to build. The way I built a book of business in printing back in the late 80s through the 90s and the 2000s is the same way when I launched Slater Success back in January of 2008. I told every person I knew in printing what I was about to do. And those relationships helped me build this company today. So this is not something I say haphazardly. This is not like, oh yeah, that. This is truly what I hone and owe my success to, and many, many others do as well. So as we go through things, what we're going to look at is three points. One, the value in existing relationships, okay, and we all have those. That goes back to who did I know in corporate events and catering to build a printing company, the value we have in existing relationships. How and why to expand your relationships, and deepen and develop your relationships. We can't, I always say, you can't run around a networking group throwing your business cards around and say, okay, did great here, and I'm off. That's not how relationships develop. So we're going to talk about how to develop and stay in touch with relationships and the importance of that. Here's a great quote, and it goes, you don't close a sale, you open a relationship if you want to build a long-term successful relationship. We're not really talking about sales today, but if you look at this quote that I pulled years ago and I truly hold near and dear to my heart, I look at this and I say, gee, I don't close anything. I open possibilities. Every relationship I have, every relationship I continue to put effort into are a plethora of opportunity. Are you ready to really embrace your opportunities by looking what's already in your world? Here's speaking of networking, here is a little photo of a recent networking group. What's funny is there's a gentleman in this group I've been emailing back and forth with all morning. He threw out to the group, hey, I'm looking for a space to hold this training. Anybody have anything? And I said, well, you could, I emailed back, and he's like, oh my goodness, I knew that, I didn't even think of it. So that's the value of the relationships. I don't see networking as something that you do for business. I see networking as something I do to relationship build. And those relationship buildings might be about, my friend who reached out to a group of us at this table and said, hey, anybody have any ideas to some space for this, a program that I'm running? And a few of us answered him. Where else does this show up? What else can you talk about here? So if you look at where relationships just transcend, I can share a story about my own children. My son was a graduate of LaGuardia High School in New York City. And when he was looking for colleges, he was in the stage management program, and that was kind of what he was looking at. We went to an open house for one of the universities that were high on his list, and they split the group up into, okay, everybody kind of in production and everybody in drama. And we end up at a small table. It was my husband, my son, and myself with another family and a woman who was one of the professors at the university. He starts chatting. My husband and I sit back. He takes the lead. He's building a relationship. They're not accepting us. I already went to school, So he takes the lead. He starts creating a relationship. Another member of the faculty comes over and said, I hear there's a stage manager. We don't see a lot of them. They start talking not just about stage management. They go into football. They're transcending. They're building a relationship. Lo and behold, as he went through the application process with this school, he stayed in conversation with the people he met. Yes, he had the grades to get in, and that is very important. But when he went for his quote-unquote audition portfolio in this and that, he walked into a room to people he already exchanged, he exchanged emails with, he stepped in, shook their hands. They're like, oh yeah, we'll look at your portfolio. But they ended up just chatting, and they built a relationship. They invited the young man to attend the university, not the portfolio to attend the university. That relationship that was built was a huge contribution to the career he's in today. So know, as we look at relationships, that relationships transcend. We could be at a networking group, and there was. And the interesting thing, we ended up talking about cooking. And different people like, oh my goodness, I'm a weekend hobby cook. Really, what do you like to make? It ended up, there was 5 women at this table one evening, and we all said, oh, we should do a dinner, like a potluck dinner party together. Do we then now continue to do business together, refer people? Absolutely. We built a relationship. We know more about one another. We know about that this one likes to travel. So when I touch base with her, I say, hey, you planning anything this summer? Oh, this one likes to garden. This one does, it is a weekend, golfer. And I just heard about, oh, there's a great organization that's doing a golf event, and would you like a connection? Because they love to do golf events for business, and it's their hobby. It's like, oh, we have a couple of great organizations doing it. Would you like that connection? The relationship transcends business. A great relationship is something you will value today tomorrow, and a lifetime of opportunity. I will always say relationships is the strongest form of marketing. Yes, there's billboards, there's Google AdWords, there's Facebook ads, there's television and podcasts, and you could go on and on of 12 to 15 ways you market. I'm considering online marketing as a resource to build offline relationships. So as much marketing as we do for our companies, our organizations, and it is important, the greatest ROI in marketing is the relationships you build. For instance, I built a relationship with somebody recently. Actually, no, I'm going to rephrase that. I built a relationship with somebody years ago. She ran a networking group. I ran a networking group back in the day, and we always kept up, and we stayed in contact. We talk once in a blue moon. We run into each other. We comment on things. If I see something going on with our kids, we mention personal congratulations and some emails, all good things. Literally, less than a week ago, I got an email from her, and she said, a friend of mine is looking to scale and grow her business, and she's starting to think about hiring a coach. I immediately said, Ivy, she needs to speak to you. I know I can trust her in your hands. The relationship goes back 8 to 10 years. There's value in your best form of marketing or the relationships you build. Never forget that. Relationships are online, offline, hobbies. I took, I'm not a golfer, but many people are. I took a beading class one evening at the Y, and for 2 sessions, and we had a great gaggle of women. And of course, as you're sitting there and beading, you start talking about everything, including business. Then I'm inviting them to a lunch and networking thing I'm attending. Oh my goodness, I'd love to come. Relationships transcend everything. Relationships are built through if you're a parent, your kids, friends, parents. One of my largest real estate clients a few years ago, I ran into the mother of my son, and her son were in 1st grade together. We ran into each other at the gym, and she looked at me, she said, "Do you know I read your emails every week?" I said, "What? I didn't even know you got my emails every week." And she goes, "Oh, absolutely. We should have coffee." A beautiful contract for one of the incredibly successful real estate organizations. Relationships come from everywhere and feed opportunity. When you have your heart and your mind open to opportunity, it is delivered. I want to share a little something about a relationship that goes back 18 years. And I've probably longer because I've been telling this story for a little while. The story is in my new book, so you could read it as well. But there is back in the day when I was a printer, 20 plus years ago, I had a client named Alice. Alice worked for a magazine called DNR. It was the other side of Women's Wear Daily in the women's world. Okay, she had a designer named Dan who designed all of her promotional material for their advertising and sales department, and I did their printing. Dan connected me to another client of his named Leslie. Leslie worked for an intimates company running their advertising and marketing department. Leslie became a client. We did probably for close to 8 years an enormous amount of printing with Leslie and the company that she represented. When I transitioned, now interestingly, we had a job that went bad, and printing is a form of manufacturing. You hear about lemon laws with cars. We had a job that went bad. It happens. Leslie said to me, "Ivy, I adore you as a woman. I can't use you as a vendor after this debacle." So most people, or many people, or I hope not many people, might have then said, this is done. No, it's not. So Leslie said it wasn't personal. So I stayed in touch with Leslie woman to woman. She eventually changed jobs. And I mentioned to her, hey, I'd love to catch up with you, have coffee with you, wish you congratulations on your new opportunity. Did not ask to do business with her, but I shared with her over coffee that I was going through a coach training program at the time. I was going to be opening another business at Slater Success. And I'm really excited. I'm not leaving the printing world just yet, but I will eventually transition. And she looked at me and she goes, okay. So if you see on this slide, it says DFS. That stands for Dress for Success. She said, okay, first things first. I'm going to introduce you to my friend Joy Gordon, who's the CEO of Dress for Success, and you're going to get involved. I need you to speak to the YES Committee, which is the Young Executive Committee. I want to know about what content you could speak on, and we're going to talk about it because you've been a businesswoman. You know, even when things went bad, you're a smart lady. This is a great resource. Through Leslie, I got involved with Dress for Success. Through Dress for Success and being involved in the young executives groups there, as well as speaking for as a volunteer, which I love to do, I ended up getting some clients. Shocking. In addition to that, just at the end of 2018, Joy was a guest on her success story when we did a series on nonprofits. Interesting, right? There's more. Leslie went on to open her own marketing and marketing company, asked me for lunch, and said, gee, I'd love to hire you as a coach, but there's a few of my friends who are in transitional things. Maybe we could put a group together. Because of Leslie, I started my first group coaching program back in the day. A few years later, she got an opportunity to run a major wholesale sales department of a global jewelry brand, a very, very posh global jewelry brand. She reaches out to me and she said, Ivy, you're always talking about women and value. I'd like you in my hip pocket as I negotiate, because I'm playing with the big boys and I know they're going to try to treat me like a woman. I said, done. She said, what are you going to charge me? I said, nothing. You land this job. I'm so proud of you. We go back forever. Let's do this. It will be fun. She lands the job and then invites me into the organization, and I've gotten several clients from that opportunity, as well as spoken and trained there. When I actually added up the numbers, Leslie, and actually going back to, and I didn't even include the work I did with Alice, okay? Leslie has resulted in 7 figures in sales for the companies I've owned and operated. Is there value in relationships? Leslie and I are continuously in touch, see each other occasionally. She has now become president of another brand, North and South America, of a global organization. And when I said congratulations, I went to see her in her office just to pass by and give her a hug. Corner office overlooking St. Patrick's Cathedral on 5th Avenue. I'm like, girlfriend, you rock. And I said, anything you need. And she goes, are you kidding, Ivy? I've already done all your goal work with my team. You rock as well. The relationship. You know, Leslie knew me back in the day when my father passed. And unfortunately, in the last year when her father passed, I had the opportunity to be with her woman to woman. It's not just about business. It's the whole life relationship that continuously uncovers opportunity. In the Board of the Boardroom, my recent book, I have in the back of the book exercise that I'm going to share with you now. So this is what I'm going to encourage every person to do, and it's vitally shows results. Simple as that. So, and it's a fun, gamey kind of thing. Make a list, and here are some of the things I want you to think about. First, make a list of every person like you know when you're in touch with from school. And I'm not kidding. I just commented on my little girlfriend I knew since kindergarten's friend on Instagram. She's visiting Cuba right now. When I go down, when I'm down in the South where she lives currently, we have an opportunity to see each other. So I'm truly not kidding. Who are you still in touch with from your childhood schools? Who are you still in touch with from many, many high school groups have Facebook groups? What about your college? I went to University of Maryland. Out of University of Maryland, there's a Facebook group for the dance majors, which I was a dance and communications major. I'm part of that Facebook group. When this book launched, my favorite teacher commented on it. I literally sat there and cried. It meant so much to me that he did. So make a list. If you went on to grad school, law school, MBAs, higher education, certificate programs, anything, any kind of advanced education, make a list of who you actually are still in the realm. Who do you remember? Next, think about your hobbies. If you take dance classes, if you're a golfer, if you like to take beading classes or pottery classes like I sometimes do at the Y, what are your hobbies? What do they look like? Who do you meet and interact with in them? What about all the jobs we've had, businesses we've had? Think about your networking groups. Who are the people who are near and dear to you? Who are the people actually, no matter what, my number one rule in these lists is who I like. Where do you live? Who are your neighbors? Make that list. I referenced before your kids, friends, parents. Oh my goodness, if you're a parent, you have access to a wealth of resources when you get involved, especially when your kids are young and you're involved in their after-school activities, the programs at their schools. Your kids, friends, and parents are a wealth of relationships. Organizations and charities or nonprofits. You know, you could put them separately, you could put them together. Some people belong to the Bar Association. I do a lot of work with attorneys. Some other organizations you might be involved for your career, or nonprofits. I'm actually talking to you right now from LA. I leave back for New York later today. And with that, I have a dear friend who I've gotten involved in a nonprofit that she's very involved in called Best Buddies. But, you know, I have another friend who's involved in another nonprofit. So I go to their fundraisers, or my husband does the golf thing for their nonprofit. Who are the wonderful people you meet by getting involved? And it could be in this category. It could be if you're religious organizations, if you're involved in any community service, community groups. There's wonderful people we meet. Make a list of all these great people. From there, create a goal for yourself, whether that be a new client, whether that be I'm planning a great trip, whether that be I was talking to a client out here yesterday. We were talking about a vegetable garden, okay? It doesn't matter what the goal is. And then take a look and say, gee, who on all these wonderful lists are resources for me? So one of my resources, I'm going to plant a bigger vegetable garden than I've ever tried this year. Last year I put in a couple of plants and I was like, oh, this is fun. So I'm going to go big. People who know me, they know that's what I do. And I realized, I was like, okay, who can I start learning about vegetable gardening from? I was like, and everybody's like, oh, read a blog. Like, I know, but I'd sooner talk to people. And I'll probably read the blogs anyway. And I realized, oh my goodness, my friend down in, my friend Gregory Ann, she's a huge gardener. She'll be a great resource to call her and guide. And then I have an opportunity to just catch up with her. Lives are busy. But if I, reach out and I say, hey, want to tap your brain, starting to think about putting a vegetable garden in this summer, she's going to find time to jump on the phone. We're going to have a little bit of a girl chat. We met, guess what? Through business. Who are your relationships? Use this as a guideline of an ongoing list. Keep it going. And as you go from goal to goal, plan to plan, look at the resource list you create and build forward. Great ways to keep in touch. Information, introduction, invitation. okay? Share information. If somebody wants to send me information on a vegetable garden, thank you. Great, do so, okay? Introduction. I received an introduction from somebody with a client. Another introduction I just did for somebody else for something completely irrelevant. Invite people. We, as women, we show up in so many places. We show up in networking groups. We show up in charities and organizations. And who can you invite? How do you gift forward? These are great ways to stay in touch with people without, a client of mine recently said, well, I followed up on that thing a lot. I can't keep calling them and following up. I said, what in the world? Why would you do that? Yes, of course you're going to follow up. I'm not saying you're not going to. Now work the relationship. What are their interests? Have you read a good article they might like to see? Watched a great YouTube video that you learned a bunch from? Read a good book? This is how we continue to build relationships until things on the sales side and business development side come over the finish line. Or you use it to even resource a great trip to Italy. One thing that is near and dear to my heart, when you give, you receive. Don't look at who's giving to you. It detracts your focus of what you're showing up and sharing with others. Give, be generous of heart, generous of mind, and you will see that come back to you always. I show up every day with an attitude of what can I do? And I wanted to encourage every person who's listening in to remember to show up with an attitude of what you can do. All of our to-do lists are full. They're long. You always say, when am I going to finish? You're not supposed to finish because the idea is to keep adding to it. That's how we continue to develop. But we show up every day and say, today, what can I do? What action can I take? How can I grow and expand the relationships that have value to me, my world, my business, my family, my heart? For those of you who'd like to keep in touch with me, I'm giving you every resource I can. I'm here. For those who are listening today versus those who listen, we have our new website going up by April 1. It's pretty exciting, so you can check that out. In the meantime, reach out to me through Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is, LinkedIn, of course. Whatever it is, say, hey, listen down, Savvy Ladies. This is one relationship I'm continuing to develop. This is one takeaway in the relationships of the action I'm taking today. That's what's important to me. If anybody's interested from the bar to the boardroom, check out Amazon.com.
Thank you, Ivy. That was great. I think we'll open it up to Q&A now. So if you have a question, you can use the chat box or you can email info@savvyladies.org. And the first question we had come in during your presentation is, I feel like I make an effort and support people in my network, but I feel uncomfortable asking for what I need. I feel like I'm always giving and too afraid to ask for help. Do you have some advice for this person?
Absolutely. So when we're afraid to ask, where there's something going on about some inner work, I would say, of what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of the success that comes, or are you afraid of the ask? And take a little time and think about that. Separate, is it the asking, or is it, oh my goodness, if they give me everything I need, where will I be in my business, my life? And that could be a little frightening or intimidating. So number one, separate that. Two, ask one person and be honest about it and say, gee, I have to tell you, I was really uncomfortable to ask this. So I'm going to do it, and I'd love some feedback from you of what you think. So be honest, be authentic. Authenticity is, I think, the golden resource for success. And so find one person that you can ask ask them and be authentic, be truthful about it, and say, I have to tell you, I've been really uncomfortable to ask you this. I'm wondering if you can help me in this area. I wanted to know this information. I'm looking for a resource here. And see how that feels, comes back to you, and then you could take it to the next step. But do a little bit of, gee, is it more frightening to ask, or is it more frightening of the result of when you ask and stepping into that success? Well, mindset stuff on the side.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. The next question for you is, how do you tactfully deal with a business relationship that seems to only understand the quid pro quo or favor for favor belief?
I always say we get to choose who we have relationships with. If it's not serving you, build another one. You know, because that kind of, well, I'll give to you, but you have to give to me, belief is incredibly draining, and it stops us from doing everything else that will benefit our businesses and our lives.
Okay, very true. Thank you. Another question is, I'm constantly networking, but not connecting with people who are open to assisting or connecting with me long term. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Ooh. So here's a kind of some questions to ask. Are you truly building relationships with people when you're networking, or are you kind of skating through the surface of networking? So I tell all my clients, I do not want anybody over networking. I don't want anybody out at multiple events in a week, because when you do that, you can't actually build the relationships because you're too busy building your business and then running to events. So your time is taken up and you don't have the opportunity to build true relationships. I truly endorse networking once a week. If you're in a BNI chapter, I consider that I consider that 1 week of the month. So I look to be truly involved in about 3 networking organizations in a year and truly build deep relationships there than showing up everywhere.
Okay, great. Do you have time for maybe 2 more questions?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, great. So this next one is, do you have any suggestions for reaching out to someone who has an impressive title? I'm usually intimidated to reach out.
So if somebody has an impressive title, I would probably do my back-end research and see who we know mutually. Either ask that person for an introduction. So you got to do your LinkedIn homework. Who else do we both know? LinkedIn's a great asset for that. If it's completely cold and you have no resource, I would start with a reach out to them and say, hey, I've been following you and this is why I'm interested in connecting. Again, that complete authenticity. You said this in an article you wrote, it really sparked my interest. Here's why.
Okay, thank you. And this is the last question we have for you, and it's saying that you touched on this a bit during your presentation when you said men might treat a woman as a woman. So how can women stay strong when it comes to male and female business relationships?
I spent 20 years in a male-dominated industry, okay? And when women were really not welcome in the printing industry, especially in the early days. There were no other women really in sales. There was no woman owning a business, very, 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 very few. And the one thing I always did is showed up as me, okay? So I show up and I'm Ivy. You're a man, you're a woman. I walk up, I put my hand out, I do a confident handshake. I'm authentic, I'm real, and it's a pleasure to meet you. If anybody gets out of line, I call them on their crap. I'll be very honest. It's like, guys, come on, not appropriate. And I will say that. I also, if you have any common interests with, if it's golf, if it's like, I like football, so I could end up talking football with a group of guys. But if we have baseball, I got no knowledge. I'm back to dance. And I will look at them, and if I'm with a group of guys networking and they go baseball, and I'm like, guys, stepping away, I'm going to go talk to some other people. Baseball is not my thing. So I truly think there's something of being true to yourself that's vitally important, and calling a spade a spade. If somebody does something out of line, say, that, guys, not cool. And I do it just like that, not cool. And they're like, oh, because sometimes they don't know. Maggie, am I answering this correctly? I want to touch base. I'm making sure I'm answering the question.
I think so. I think it's great advice. Yeah. Just kind of be honest about it.
And be true to you.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. Okay, well, I'm sure that answers that. And so those are all the questions we have. So I want to thank you, Ivy, for a really great presentation. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today and asking questions. We hope that you'll be joining us again. If you didn't have a chance to write down this information from Ivy, we'll be sending it out along with the link for Ivy's book. And thank you again so much, Ivy.
Thank you. It's been a joy to be with you, and it's always a joy to be with Savvy Ladies. Participants, please feel free to reach out to me. You have more questions, I'm always here.
Great. Thank you.